I think in a way, I always tell myself this lie, and it kind of pushes me forward, which is something along the lines of, I can create this format, and then that's all I'll have to do. Then I can just keep using that formula. There you go. I keep trying to find a formula for something. I'm like, and then I don't have to be creative anymore on this kind of thing. But then I think of another idea that just completely captivates me, and the whole process restarts.
Welcome back to Puppeteers. We're your hosts, Adam Kreutinger
and Cameron Garrity.
And today we brought back Barnaby Dixon. Welcome back to the show, Barnaby.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Good.
Wonderful.
It is so good to have you back on the show. The last time you were here, I was not in the co-host seat, so it's wonderful to finally meet. But for anybody who does not know, Barnaby Dixon is the YouTube sensation. Just recently hit 1 million subscribers on YouTube, which is incredible. He has a truly unique aesthetic in the style of puppetry that he performs. You know it from Das Puppenspiel, if you're in Germany, as well as he was featured in episode 7 of the Netflix show Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance. And like I said, his work has been seen all over the world thanks to his YouTube channel. So Barnaby Dixon, welcome back to Puppeteers. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks. It's good to be here.
Sure. So before we get into the thick of it, is there anything that you're working on right now?
There's a few things. Of course, YouTube is kind of happening all the time. I put videos up, I would say, every month to a month and a half these days, but I always have at least a few on the go at any given time. There was a theatre project that I believe is still going ahead, and that still does take a fair bit of my time. But of course, with the lockdown situation, everything is kind of ground to a little bit of a halt. So that should hopefully be happening in the new year at some point. But the project is fascinating, and it's taken me away from kind of the smaller scale stuff and onto larger puppets with similar mechanisms, but just kind of taken onto a larger scale.
Yeah,
so
I
working that
remember
out's
seeing
incredible.
you. I saw a video where you were talking a little bit about that, and in this, you're directing these puppet parts of it. You're not performing in it, are you?
No, I wouldn't be performing in it. I think there would be puppeteers and actors, and there might be some crossover with who puppeteers. Sometimes maybe the actors would as well. But mostly the job is my job is to design these mechanisms, really. I'm director of puppetry, so that role will extend to kind of tutorials and things like that for the actors that are going to be puppeteering later on. But at the moment, it's just figuring out how to make these things move believably. Wow. Yeah, and it's interesting that weight has become kind of a concern with the puppets too. I mean, before, when I was working such a small scale, I didn't have to worry about that so much. But as soon as you increase the scale, but thankfully we're using 3D printing, and you can really just model these things down as small as you can possibly get them, and sometimes increase the flexibility and durability. So.
Oh, okay. So I imagine that a lot of these pieces don't have many joints. Then, do they?
They do, but there's ways to kind
joints.
of. They do. We've kind of figured out a way to externally mechanize them, if you see what I mean. So to kind of amplify movements that happen in the hand over the course or over the length of a leg of an animal, for example. It's going well. I'm confident for the time being that it's going to work.
That's great. How many puppets are going to be in this then?
30.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's a lot of puppets. Holy cow.
Wow.
Yeah.
So are they a similar aesthetic to what your work typically looks like, or just from a performing standpoint, like your work, but larger?
In a way, in terms of the emphasis on mechanisms and things like that, and I guess innovation as well, trying to do things in a new way to kind of excite and interest people. But in terms of the style, I mean, for me, what the puppets have to do informs the style, and weight being kind of a concern with the size of the puppets, that informs what materials you choose, and then you sort of try and figure out. So we're looking at kind of like a paper kind of origami aesthetic, and using some nice kind of durable type of paper to kind of fill in gaps and things like that without adding too much weight.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's so cool.
Yeah, it really is. And so what has the experience been like? Because you sort of famously have done work as a solo performer. Of course, things like the Dark Crystal, and you talked last time about collabing with J.J. Abrams a little bit. But what's it been like to be immersed in this theater community and really trying to work with a much larger team than you're probably used to?
Well, it's been really, really cool. I think there are certain jobs that are outside my realm of knowledge. For example, papercraft. I'd no knowledge of origami, well, a little bit of origami, like just paper airplane type of stuff before that. But we have some people do. I mean, and this wasn't something you started out doing, but just modeling the puppets' faces. So these are all different animals. And in terms of design, the faces take the longest. They're the ones that you have to take in terms of the aesthetic design. But she's got that down now, and I'm so grateful. We have people on the team that can take control of the aspects that they're able to in terms of their specialization. For me, I stick to the mechs really, and whenever there's a mech to be designed, I would be the one that design it. But at the same time, I'm able to say to this person, okay, how could this be modeled and printed? And it's really useful to rely on others in that capacity because there's a lot of puppets.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, gosh, the scope of that must be incredible. Now, are the puppets going to be sort of the main focus of the performance, or are they sort of a segment within a larger show with predominantly human actors?
I would suppose there'd be puppets in pretty much every scene, in varying degrees. So the stage, it's a stage show of these Philip Pullman books called Dark Materials. This is the series, and it's one of the concepts, or one of the kind of main themes, is that each character has this kind of companion in sort of animal form. So every actor who's on stage should have some kind of, they're called demons, that kind of accompany them. So whenever there's an actor on the stage, there'll be an accompanying demon, essentially.
Yeah. Oh, that's incredible.
That's so cool. That's amazing. So, so you're not doing any of the 3D printing yourself. I know in the last episode when we talked to you, you talked about potentially one day hoping to dip your toe into that. Have you had a chance to do that at all yet?
I have, and I can 3D model now, thankfully.
Oh, my goodness.
It's taken a while. We had a really good specialist in this, and he's still working on this when we need something done quickly. And there's certain kind of workflow issues that are just hard to kind of dial in at the beginning. And I can model things up fairly well, but it might not be the most practical way of doing it. You know what I mean? So whenever there's kind of a bulk amount of stuff that we have to do, they usually get sent his way. But whenever there's something like an adjustment or something like that, I'm capable of doing now and I have a 3D printer too. Just a hobbyist one, but man, they get them really good and very cheap nowadays.
Yes, I know. My brother builds them, and he was just I was on the phone with him yesterday. He's like, this new one just came out that's $200. It's amazing. It's like, if I didn't already have 5 of them, I'd buy this one now too. So I'm thinking about diving in myself. And now in your personal projects, is there any that we'd be familiar with of your puppets that you've already implemented these 3D printed parts?
In terms of designs that I've already done,
things that we've seen on your YouTube channel recently.
Let's think. No,
I wouldn't know necessarily by looking at it.
No, because I mean it's 3D printed in plastic, and I use a lot of plastics anyway. But I don't think I've utilized it yet. It might, if I did, it would be for the smallest part that I can't remember. It wouldn't certainly be not for a larger.
Of course. Yeah. And again, congratulations on you just hit 1 million subscribers on YouTube, which is remarkable. Especially as a one-man band there creating puppetry online. It truly is remarkable. You're doing wonderful.
You guys are doing incredibly well too. I took a peek at you. You're over 30,000 now, or is it more than that?
Yeah, we're actually just about to hit 60,000 at this point.
60,000.
60,000. Yeah. So
wow.
Do you remember those days, Barnaby? Way back.
I can't. The milestones happened very quickly at the beginning because I had kind of like a viral success at the beginning. So I think I think I went from something like 500 subscribers to close to 50,000 within a week or something like that. It was really mental. It was too many, really.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're right. Again, I'm not to trivialize how we're doing. I think we're very proud of what we're doing. I think last time we talked, we had I think we were at 12,000 or something. So so it is pretty good growth, and again, we're happy with that. But to bring it back to what you're doing too, is one of the ones that I wanted to talk to, which I think it came out last year, but it's one of my particularly favorite ones of yours, because I think it encompasses so much of your work and what you do into one short video, is your Oogie Boogie Man video. Can you talk a little bit about the inspiration for that project?
Yeah, I guess. Well, it's a rip-off of The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Of course, of course. I mean, definitely that's the
wonderful homage.
Yes. There you go. Yeah, an homage. Yeah, there you go. Homage. I'm not sure whatever it is. Yeah, I did it in. Well, it's for me, that was a project that really kind of captured why I loved puppetry so much, because coming from a stop motion background, that would have taken. I don't know. That would have taken months to do, probably, and that was, the whole thing was shot in about 2 nights, I think, which is nothing. It's incredible, really. I mean, the speed of production that is possible with these puppets is it blows me away every day, really. And but that particular one, playing around with the UV lights is really fun. That's a really good way to get yourself to recede into the background, but not necessarily pretend, sort of overcompensate for your presence. You know what I mean? Yeah. So sometimes if someone tries to chroma key out, you see like a fuzzy line, and I don't like that so much. I think people can suspend disbelief quite easily, even in video form. So you don't want to kind of undermine people's ability to do that, because it's kind of a fun thing. I don't think it's done very much in film and TV, and for good reason sometimes. Yeah. But yeah, that was a fun little bit. The musical element was fun too, and the cat was fun.
Yeah, I was gonna say Matilda, your cat, makes her way into many, if not maybe most of your videos. But another couple other things I wanted to point out in that, and I know it's something we talked a little bit about last time too, is because I think beyond the puppetry, which is one thing that I think a lot of people see your work and are just amazed by it. But when I look at that, I mean, like, the way it's, like, storyboarded and put together, and the cinematography that you have, specifically certain parts where it seems like you're angling the camera up, and this small puppet that is just your hands, it comes off as giant from the way that you're filming this thing. And of course, not to mention, we were just talking about it off camera, I mean Cameron, your singing and your voice and the way that you produce all this music, the way that you incorporate music and puppetry is remarkable. And I don't even think this short is even the perfect example of that, because you literally make music using the puppets, which is just you're a Renaissance man in puppetry. It's amazing.
I think part of it is that to be able to perform, I guess. I think going from stop motion to puppetry gave me a taste of how incredible it is to be able to create something quickly, and how fun and less stressful in some ways. And anything that is kind of a performance aspect that's performable in real time, like music, like having the puppets play musical instruments. I think people connect to it in a way, and there's you get the sense that it's live somehow. I think it's, and perhaps it could translate into like a live show, either online or in person. It just gives you more, the more you work at these things. I'm not amazing at these things yet. A lot of those elements still need a lot of honing, but the sooner I introduce it to my channel, the sooner you can give people the sense of, okay, I'm trying for this angle. Bear with me for a little bit, and hopefully it'll come off okay.
Yeah, no, especially because I think at last time we talked, it was right when you had released the human face puppet that the video that you did, and then you said, I remember you talking about the response that you got, that people thought it was interesting but really weird, and you thought there was something there, but you'd have to alter it in some way, and that seems like what that puppet came out of. Is it just using the lower half of the screen?
Yeah, yes. It was the first kind of iteration of that was like my whole face. and people thought it was creepy, and it was creepy for sure. Yeah. But it was still fun and a fun little experiment. I think I said at the time, like, oh, well, this needs refining for sure. I mean, creepy puppetry, I think, is a genre in itself. Yes. But at the same time, it's good to be as self-aware as you can when you're creating it. So if I mean, the worst puppets are the ones that people don't realize are creepy, but the rest of the world does think are creepy.
I was going to say, you don't want it to be creepy in the wrong way.
yeah, I guess. So if you're aware of the creepiness and are able to lean into the creepiness, but steer it into a domain of creepiness that seems a bit more self-aware, that's what I was trying to do with the final thing. So I just called him like creepy face puppet. That's his kind of sort of general name for now. But yeah. That was a while ago. Was that the last one 2 years ago or something when we last chatted?
Yeah. It was August 2018. So yeah, it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, and one thing that just makes me think of, like, obviously YouTube is your focus and you're doing phenomenal on it. And of course, people should check out your Patreon as well to support the work that you're doing too.
Oh, thank you.
Do you ever still find yourself wanting to or creating short films for festivals or for other events that don't necessarily go straight to YouTube or Patreon, or is that really your focus now?
I guess never say never, but I kind of come from that world a little bit from stop motion in that you would finish a film and you'd be very keen for it to get into festivals, so maybe as a result you wouldn't put it online straight away, and maybe it wouldn't get. I think when you ask that question, I think of a specific film that I did maybe back in 2013, which was called Once Upon a Time in the Shed, and it had these little real snails with like puppet cowboys running around on them or riding around on them, and it was a kind of a mix of puppetry / what's it called, time-lapse photography. And it was very popular, and one of the things that made it really popular was that it got featured on Vsauce's channel. You know this one? They do kind of like science like that. It was Vsauce 2, and it got a really nice little slot right at the end of the video. So once people had finished watching that video, they could just click right over. But I was a bit paranoid at the time because it was I had it listed as an unlisted video, and there was this kind of idea which I think it's a true idea where or maybe at the time, maybe it's changing a little bit now, but if you put your films up online before they go to a festival, the festivals don't want to show them necessarily. They want to be the ones to kind of pop the film's cherry in a way, which is kind of a pity. And for me, I probably lost out on a lot of early success because I had the thing unlisted. I mean, it went to some festivals. I had some really great memories from those festivals, and lots of people saw it. But you know, had it not been unlisted, quite likely I would have my trajectory would have started a bit sooner. But I don't have regrets about it now. But it does make me a little bit cynical about sometimes the film festival, that approach. I hope they're a bit more forward thinking in it. I mean, I understand it from that perspective too, though. Because
of course,
just watch them online, fine.
Yeah, well, they could be inherently prolonged. Just you apply to it, it's a couple months later that you even hear back from them, and then it's another month or two before it premieres, and before like a whole year has gone by.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well,
I had a similar approach to my first one, and I just didn't get up online straight away. I should have done, really. I mean, it's the audience could be there, but if the film's not there, the audience aren't going to be there.
Right.
So
yeah, and also too, I think a lot of people in a way use those as an opportunity to get more eyes on it. And now, since you've been able to build up your own platform, I'm not going to say there's no value into it, because it can be very prestigious, and being able to get awards and accolations through these formal venues. But yeah, you have your own reach now, so you can just not only do you have your own reach, but to people who really want to support you. So it's a perfect gift for them. It's a perfect relationship.
Yeah, I think I'm really happy with the setup at the moment. I think I do the odd sort of little behind the scene video for my patrons, which I'm more than happy to do because they're supporting a lot of what I do. But at the same time, if I was to create something really, really polished, I think at least my current thinking is that I'd want as many people to see it as possible, because, it's a lot of the opportunities come from people sharing my work with the right people. So
Yeah.
You can potentially shoot yourself in the foot if you don't share things, with as many people as possible.
Yeah.
I suppose.
Absolutely.
There's probably another argument around it, but I maybe I'll think of it later.
Something I am curious about though, because you have such defined characters in what you do. I mean, of course, Dabchick is your wonderful like spokes character and stuff like that. But do you, in your mind, do they all exist in the same world? Like, is it something that, if you were to make a short feature or something like that you could see them all interacting with each other? Or do you kind of view them as self-contained things?
I think I'm open to either, really. There's an aesthetic that ties all of them somewhat together, I think. Or you can see if a puppet is made by me, I suppose. But if I was to... I don't really know. I think with the right opportunity, and if the story was good enough, the stylistic changes or differences aren't so great that they wouldn't fit in the same universe, and vice versa. Maybe there's one that you want to expand out into a universe of its own. So I think just keeping an open mind on that is the best way for the moment.
Yeah, it's like they each have their own standalones. It's like the Barnaby Dixon cinematic universe. Yeah, so you can have all these single episodes and an Avengers at the end.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's doing it like a universe with different solar systems within might be the best way.
Sure.
That's so cool.
So I was blown away by the work that you did in the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance, and I knew because I knew you were involved with the Netflix show. I kind of watched every episode getting ready, like, oh, when are we going to see the Barnaby thing? When are we going to... And I'm looking in the background for like little mech characters, or like if there was going to be a little bug coming up. And then all of a sudden episode 7 comes around and they announce it's a puppet show. And your work comes out. It was so incredible. And so congratulations on that. But what was it like to really bring your own personal style and aesthetic into a world that is already so steeped in its own world building?
It was really fun. I think when it comes to aesthetic, I should really credit kind of the Frouds really, and Toby, and because he sculpted the head and all that kind of thing, and Wendy dressed the puppet too.
Maybe your approach is the better
yeah
one.
I suppose so, like the technique. And it got a lovely kind of platform in that episode, didn't it? I mean, it was unmistakable when it arrived in the show that it was mine. But people told me that, so that was really nice. And the experience overall was really, really easy and collaborative and nice, and just everyone was just utterly easy and lovely to work with. I didn't have any bad experiences from the whole thing, which sounds like a lie, but it's not.
No. Yeah. It's funny that you say that, because I have some friends who are big Dark Crystal fans, and know of your work, but otherwise like wouldn't have necessarily known ahead of time that you were involved with the show. And they texted me like a week or two after it came out, and they said, "Can you believe the Henson Company ripped off Barnaby Dixon?" I was like, "You got to read the credits. It was him. It was him."
Taking advantage of a poor little YouTuber online.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, I know. I saw some of those comments too, and I was like, "It's like, hey, bro, you might want to check out the Hensons are totally ripping you off right now on Netflix." It's like
there are credits. You didn't.
I was going to say you could read the
no
credits.
one watches the credits, right?
I know. No, they can't wait that long. They gotta say what they think before then.
Oh my gosh, that's right.
No, it was great though. And so I know you mentioned that the Frouds did some of the costuming and the sculpts, but I imagine it was you working on the mechanisms and the sort of underbelly, correct?
Yeah, that's right. So I just approached it like I approach that style of puppets with the two-handed one. I swapped some things around. So quite often they have this kind of gripping hand, but we wanted a little bit more control of the grip. So I think we swapped out a magnet for the thumb and put the other moving finger there. So what happened is these three would come and close against that hand there. And you got a bit more stability in the thumb, and I think we were able to kind of wire the sword when at the point that he had to. I think he picked it up normally. Yeah. Or
Yeah.
did he pick it up normally?
I think
We,
it
oh yeah,
came
we played
into
that
his
bit.
hand and he grabbed it.
Ah,
Well,
no, I'll tell you what happened. I
oh,
remember
yeah.
now. We shot that one backwards, and we had him actually in and taking it away from there so that we could get that perfect grip. We did it a few times, and it did work all right, but because it was a very tight shot, and I think it might have been moving around or something like that.
Sure.
So they just wanted to make sure that it ended in the right place. So reversing the footage made sense.
Yeah, it's so funny. On one of our recent episodes, we had Philip Huber on the show, and he was talking about doing the marionette work in Being John Malkovich, and there was a very specific scene where the marionette had to go from moving really quickly to stopping in a dead in its tracks, and he couldn't do it because there was so much wobbling. So they had him do it backwards, and then it was too perfect. So he had to actually like kind of muddy up his puppetry a little bit. Was that something that you guys had to do too, or different kind
I
of?
think on that bit it was such a minimal sort of thing, just closing the thing. But yeah, I do. There have been times when you do have to kind of, instead of having the puppet kind of just move away from that position, you've got to kind of do the backwards lead. What's it like? It's like the cushioning of, say, a puppet's landing or something like that, and it's doing that. You know, you don't want to do that. You don't want to have that as the reversible footage. You want to start off with it like that kind of thing, I suppose. Sure. And play it so you get the sense of that the velocity doesn't just disappear and the energy doesn't just dissipate into nothing. You want to see it transferred into the feet. And if you're doing it in reverse, that needs to be the place it starts, and then whatever movement from that.
Now you're sort of famous for building the puppets to your own specifications around your own human hands that have 4 fingers and a thumb. How did that approach change when it had to be performed by a mystic, which I think has 3 fingers?
Oh yeah, I didn't think about that at all.
Or was that just, did I just break an illusion that you were?
Yeah, I think you did. I think you might go on a plot hole. Yeah, I don't know. Well, I was
Lisa Henson. You're welcome to come on the show, and we can talk all about.
Yeah, we need answers. Lisa.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I think I had a prosthetic thumb on or something like that, because there was can't remember his name now. Really nice chap. Played the is it these I can't remember the names of the characters. Skeptic?
The Skeksis or the Mystics. Yeah.
Okay, cool. He played that most of the time, but for that scene they dressed me up in those robes, and I think in terms of what they put in my hands, they didn't put anything other than a prosthetic thumb, because when I do that puppetry, that's the only, or it was this one maybe, that's the only thumb that sticks out. But I think if you watch it frame by frame, you'll probably see my fingers.
Got it.
Probably will.
Yeah,
but that's part of the magic, I think. I don't think that they didn't go above and beyond to conceal those things. So to be honest, I think that's a kind of a charm.
I agree, and I think that's something that was one of my favorite things about the show. Obviously, there were elements that were digitally enhanced, but so much of it was just that rich texture, and knowing that the stuff actually existed. No, for a second I thought you were gonna say that they like sent you a mystic hand that you had to like completely reconfigure. That's really cool though.
Yeah, that really was remarkable. And again, I don't want to understate that. The way you were able to to fall in through this by doing what you do and then just putting it online. It's just a true testament to when you do good work and you believe in it, and people, opportunities can just find you, opportunities that you never would have expected and probably ever would have sought out yourself.
Yeah, I think, and I mean, even if you have the best video in the world that's going to get you, incredible work opportunities, if people find it, they still have to find it. So if you can do, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm the example of this, but if you can do incredible videos of every single week or something, and I wasn't doing that for sure, some were a bit funky earlier on especially. But if you do 2 videos, you double your chances of getting discovered or noticed or something like that. You do 3, you triple them. It's just, you just got to keep at it. And it's disheartening when you put, and stop motion is kind of an example of that. I love the medium, but it's unforgiving in that way that you can spend a year or many years on an individual project, get it up online and just no one will see it. And it's no one's fault. It's just, how would they know it's there? So the more you can get up there, the more chance you have of that happening. And if it's good quality, then the more chance people will be receptive to it.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're saying that too. But also I want to touch on too for people listening who might try to emulate the idea of building a platform to get to work is, you know, I think there's a lot to say for how much you do put out. Like you said, it's not weekly, which would be the ideal. The more you can, I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, I tried it. I tried a couple of videos and it didn't work." It's like, that's not the way YouTube works. Like, you can't just like, oh, this didn't do well, so nothing will. It's really a matter of quantity in a way. And like you said, quality is important. But one thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is that quality, to an extent, can be very subjective as well. You know, because it's one thing that helped me to be able to start producing more is realizing perfect for most of my audience is a slightly lower level than my perfect.
Yes,
you know, there's so many people that work so long on perfecting one thing, it takes them a year or two to produce one piece of content because they want to perfect it. When it's the 80% rule, really, is what it is. If you can get 80% there, you know, ship it if you can, because, you know, I'd rather have, you know, in that year 5 projects that I do that are at 80% than one project that's at 100.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. There are some people who talk about this really well. Also, I think, you know, Brady Haran of Number File. He's based quite locally, and he was on Adam Savage's Tested. I think there's in podcast format, so that would have been maybe probably before all of this, maybe this time last year. I'm not completely sure. But
We'll
he was
include it in the
about,
show notes.
Oh yeah, cool. I'll find that for you guys. And he was talking, because he might have been on a couple of times, I'm not sure. But he was talking about, you know, people that come to him saying, "Oh, how do you become successful on YouTube? Or how do you sort of? I've got this film and no one's watching it online." It's like, well, that's great. Do another one. You know, it's simply you just got to keep doing it. Right. There's many reasons. Also, the Rick and Morty creators that I heard them say, you know, to advise to young creators: don't just be working on something every month. Try and have something finished every month. You know, there's certainly something to getting a sense of, or getting experience of, an entire production arc, beginning, middle, and end. You know, the process, pre-production, post-production, everything, and then getting it out there. There's people that work on projects kind of a hobby, and they're just whittling away at that thing for years. And when they finally get it up online, it might do well, but with that amount of time that you put in, it's disheartening if it doesn't, you know, make your career. You know, so.
Absolutely. You know, one thing that I think about, and I tell people too, is like it's people are always looking for more ideas. You can get more in if you let more out too. You kind of free up that space in your head. And the other thing is too is you know, like, in a way, you don't want your first video to go viral. Like, if it does, that's great, right? But then again, in a way, it's kind of the kiss of death, because you want to have a body of work for people to discover, you know?
Yeah.
Because let's say you have 100 videos and the number 101 goes viral, then they have a kind of a place to hang out for a while and check out all your stuff.
Yeah. And I think people rarely subscribe on the first video they see too. It's usually like the second or something, you know. So, you know, I was doing Dabchick episodes every week for about a year to maybe a year and a half before I had my video go viral, which, you know, was before it went viral. It's kind of disheartening. It's like, no one's watching. I get 500 views and I'd be like, wow, 500 views, you know, on a video. But then when the Manu video blew up in 2016 or something, then, yeah, exactly. As you were saying, they had a place to hang and they would subscribe based on Dabchick. You know, I think people came for Manu but stayed for Dabchick in those early years. Which, it was perfect, really. I was so fortunate because I think it was even the first video that I had been in myself, perhaps, and I did all the right things that I'd never done before. I said, you should subscribe to this sort of things, here's my Twitter, all this kind of thing. And just by chance, that was the one that blew up. So that, yeah, it's probably the best kind of, in terms of growth rate in exposure and percentage of success. I don't think I'll ever have another one like that. And I don't really want one either, because it was very stressful in lots of ways too.
I could imagine.
Yeah.
So with people seeing you from these two different perspectives, on one side, it kind of seems, from my perspective, that there's a little bit of pressure on you to come up with a new design of a puppet. Because I saw some amazing things that you've come up with, of course, and you did reveal it in the last one, your kind of aardvark-like character, and then in the last 4 months, you've released your fish-like character.
Oh, yeah.
And you seem to be coming up with these new puppet ideas, and I'm just wondering, I'm sure there's a little bit of both, but how much of that is just your natural, just want to create something different versus the little bit of pressure to have something new and distinctly different for your audience?
Well, I feel it's actually the other way around, in that the stuff that I keep doing, I feel more of an obligation from the audience to keep doing sometimes. I mean, I do like Dab Chick a lot, and I feel I have such freedom with that character, but I don't feel I could give him up for a couple of reasons. One, I don't want to, but secondly, the audience probably wouldn't like that. So there's a slight bit of audience pressure, but that doesn't dictate what I do. I wouldn't say. I of course feel an obligation to make the most entertaining things like I can, given the resources I have and the time I have. But in terms of the inclination to create new stuff, that just happens naturally. Sometimes I wish I could stop it, because I have new ideas I mean, I have about 6 different new ideas on the go at the moment, and it's a constant battle between which of them gets my attention at any time. And I'm excited by all of them, and it's, yeah. I don't know where to go with that.
It's remarkable
that's
that you
great.
can have that much originality just coming out of your head. Just two that I was just referring to recently. Of course, the fish one, Phil, and there was such a cool video. And I think in that video you mentioned that you hoped to do some vlogs with him, and I think that would be amazing, especially with the way that you built it with the bubbles and all types of different things that it can do. I'm really excited about. But the other thing was a video you made. Talk, and the whole thing was very experimental. It was maybe you can explain a little better. It was the puppetry in liquid, where you built this moving case that was filled with like jelly, and then like put these objects in there that float around. It was unbelievable. I felt like I was watching like a sci-fi thing, or like atoms moving around in a close-up micro photography thing, or it was amazing.
That's nice to hear. I had another interview earlier today for a school that were interested in hearing about what I do, and they brought that one up too, and they were equally as excited about it, which is nice. That's got an interesting backstory, that kind of cage thing, because it was a concept I came up with about 5 years ago or something like that, before any of this had kind of happened. And I was, at that point, I mean, people would get the impression that I went kind of straight into puppetry from stop motion, but it was kind of a bit more of a process. So that was, and the Snail Western film is also an example of something similar to this, where it's kind of a mix between stop motion and live action and time lapse and that kind of thing. I figured if I could create some kind of wonderful kind of spacescape or something with like a spaceship going through, that it'd be such an interesting way of kind of steering the thing from the outside. And I think the technically it can be executed way better. I think the best way would be to have it like suspended, so you didn't have to roll it around. A lot of the times it would fall, and then kind of weight it so the center of mass was completely in the middle, so you could literally just, move it in a certain direction, watch Netflix for a bit, and then come back and then change the direction again. I mean, it was almost like puppetry that kind of does itself in a way. Right. The idea was to take some of the effort away from stop motion, so that I could speed up the process and work on other things too.
I can say with confidence that no one else has ever taken a pebble and a trash bag and made it look so beautiful.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Sure. It was funny because I'd made that ship and I weighted it very carefully so that it would always go straight in the direction of gravity. Otherwise, you have it kind of falling in kind of funny ways. But by far the more successful thing was, it was just that pebble and that little bit of trash bag that moved around, which took 1 minute to make compared to like about a week of putting a lead weight in exactly the right place and covering it over and painting it.
Isn't that funny? Why do we try so hard? Why do we try so hard? Right?
Yeah.
Again, it's kind of the 80-20% rule that we were just talking about, right? It's like sometimes you just got to do things and play and experiment.
Yeah, sometimes it's the 80% of work that does it, and sometimes it's the 1% of work that works. So there's something to, I think, I don't know, there's something to a simplicity of approach that's appealing too. So overcomplicating things can be can be a bit of a turn off, I think, for an audience sometimes. Yeah.
That's something that I think is so captivating about your work is how deceptively simple it could be, because people they see exactly what you're doing. Most of the time, at least, like when you're not doing the blacklight stuff, they could see your hands. They know that's exactly, I could get my hands in those same positions. But the places you're able to take it to is so wonderful. I'm really fascinated if you could talk a little bit about your creative process, because I know it could take a couple months for you to get to a final puppet, and then it's the refining of practice, and you discover more and more things. But where do you kind of start with an idea? Do you think, oh, I really would love to be able to capture the movement and the animation of a fish? Or do you say like, oh, I got this rubber tubing, I wonder what I could do to like turn it into a dog puppet or a rib cage or whatever? Like where do you typically start, or does it kind of depend on the project?
I guess it depends on the project. Earlier on especially, and still to some degree, I take a huge inspiration from the limitations that I have, because if you can work with the limitations that you have already, you're not going to be bumping up against something that's just going to be insurmountable or unsurpassable, so it's like aesthetically, especially, the approach for like my stop motion puppets was very kind of rough and ready, because my approach was rough and ready, and the materials looked found because they were found, things like that. I think I am guided certainly by practicality. That's not to say that every result is entirely practical, and that can take some refining. Not sure where I'm going with this really, other than I suppose, I like to, I think in a way, I always tell myself this lie, and it kind of pushes me forward, which is something along the lines of, I can create this format, and then that's all I'll have to do. Then I can just keep using that formula. There you go. I keep trying to find a formula for something. I'm like, and then I don't have to be creative anymore and this kind of thing. But then I think of another idea that just completely captivates me, and the whole process restarts.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Wow,
that's very cool.
Exhausting.
But I you have talked in your videos though about like studying the anatomy of like how a dog walks, and you even illustrated in the one video like the walk pattern and stuff. So I guess that was part of where my questioning was like, did that study come from, oh, I have the puppet created and I want to now learn how to manipulate it? Or you were thinking like, oh, I'm looking at my friend's dog, that's really cool, I want to see that in a puppet?
Right. I think again, to a degree, you think about the environment and what you have, or what you want to be able to create, and the factors that are dictating it beyond your control, in terms of like maybe dexterity being one kind of thing that takes it to a certain place, then weight being another thing that takes it to another place, then inspiration being another thing. It's like, oh, they'd be great to create this movement. Is that possible, taking into account physics, weight, dexterity, all these kind of things? So it is kind of like trying to keep a plate spinning, or maybe multiple plates spinning, something like that, I suppose. In terms of observation, I had a stock answer for this, but I'm not sure it's quite right. I used to say that the main thing is knowing when something looks wrong in terms of movement, because then you just try another thing, and if that looks wrong, knowing what's wrong is almost more important than knowing when something's right, because you're aware of the process. You've kind of already tackled the stumbling blocks and all this kind of things. Like, no, I know that's wrong because I already tried this sort of thing. So knowing whatever movement or whatever, if it looks wrong, that's very useful. But I do think I am quite interested in anatomy and movement, and I have Instagram, and I post like my cat and things like that. But I also post like a lot of kind of like slow-mo videos of animals. And I find that really, really, really interesting. I find that fascinating. So obviously I do look at these things with immense interest. So that's got to inform something too, I think.
That's great. Yeah, we talked to Mervyn Miller about over a year ago now. And he worked on Warhorse, and he was talking about developing the movement and that, and how, yes, there's the wrong way to do it, but there's also the too perfect way to do it. Especially with something like that, it looks so mechanical. And he said when they had the horses pretending to do dressage, that it just looked like a robot, and kind of baking in, this goes back to like baking in some imperfections so that it feels more real, more human.
Another example of that with the Warhorse guys too. I've kind of been binging on all. I never saw it actually. I'd love to see it someday. I think those puppets are really perfect. But not
my gosh, I'm obsessed with Handspring Productions. Oh my goodness.
Yes, they're doing well. They deserve all the credit they get. Really, they've done some of the best puppets, and I guess in history. I mean, it's hard to know what was made in prehistory. I guess some puppets were, but yeah, they've done some incredible stuff. And another thing to that point is they said that they were investing quite a lot of time in getting a good breathing motion, where the rib cage would kind of open up and close, and they're trying to find the best way to do that. And on paper, or as a concept, that seems like a good idea, but they just realized you just stand up a little and then lower yourself down a little. So they had the guy in the heart position, which is the central puppeteer, who's kind of inside the chest cavity, just go up and down a bit, and it works just as well. And that's probably, it's not perfect in a way, but at the same time, it's a new kind of perfect.
And ultimately probably more effective than if they had figured out some strange mechanism
and probably more intuitive for the performer too, to a degree, and probably keeps the weight down of the puppet too as well. So if it ticks enough boxes.
But the beautiful thing about that creation process is that let's just say that they did figure out what that mechanism was and then scrapped it. And this is just a hypothetical now at this point. Right. But that's possible. The kind of thing that you could keep in a corner, and then the next time you need to create something else, that'll work perfectly. Yeah,
that could be like the integral piece to another project whereby that's not something that you can substitute for something more sort of grassroots. It's possible. Failure shouldn't be looked at as failure. If you've made a sort of wrong move, it's just an inevitable part of things, and the sooner that you can kind of inoculate yourself against failure, the sooner you can deal with it in creative processes. I mean, I don't think that was, and it's not an example of a failure because they succeeded, incredibly. Yes. But I'm sure there were more things that they tried that didn't work than did work. And I think the difference is you want to be able to kind of sort of be standing on the top of all of your failures at the end of it, the big part of them, rather than being buried by them, I suppose.
I love that.
That's definitely
it's not the first time I said it. I made it out like it was, but I said it this morning, and it was the first time I said it this morning. I'll say in that interview that I said before.
That's okay. We're gonna pretend that it was that this was the breaking of that.
We don't have to.
So one more thing I want to bring up too is I feel very fortunate that I've actually been able to see your performances live as well. Whereas probably I'd have to say again over 90% of people who are familiar with your work have watched it through YouTube and through the medium like that. But I was able to see meet you and see you perform in California at the Liparian event that was. And I was wondering about have you had many more opportunities to do things like that, and how did you like it compared to doing just things on YouTube? And more
it's a good experience. It's terrifying, actually. I find it very nerve-wracking. But I do find if I can get through the first 5 minutes, then I do sort of loosen up and relax a little bit more.
What in the world would have been terrifying about doing live puppetry in a small room, and Brian Henson was there too, and a bunch of other people? What's terrifying about that? I can't imagine.
That might be part of it for sure.
He knew you were in the audience, Adam.
Oh yeah, that's right. Of course, super terrifying.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go on.
I like it. I think again, it's something that it's a useful skill to be able to have to sort of talk publicly and show the things publicly. I mean, I find that I'm able to kind of ease myself into it in terms of taking the attention off me and kind of holding the puppet, and this is giving a sort of demo that way, especially in the first part of the performance. The less I can make it about me, the less kind of self-conscious I am sometimes on and those kind of things. I don't know. I think you get a mix of puppeteers. I think you get the people from animation backgrounds that are a bit more introverted, maybe predominantly, and those that are from acting backgrounds a bit more extroverted. And I think obviously sort of stage performance comes a bit more intuitively to the latter.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
I'm somewhere between the two, to be honest. I think with the right amount of practice, I could get okay with it.
No, absolutely. You know, I'll tell you, it was a wonderful event. It was so amazing to see. And one thing I noticed is that obviously there was a healthy amount of puppeteers there in the audience, but there also, I mean, everyone sitting around me were just people who came because, again, they had like seen your YouTube videos and they wanted to see it live, not people that were doing puppetry or had a particular interest in puppetry. And that being said, my parents came with me and my wife was there, and they were all just blown away by it because it was just it was so unique and it was so different. One thing that was special that I thought was kind of cool is that was you revealed the dog at that time, which had never been seen at that point.
Yeah.
And it was just so cool. I know that event was filmed too. It was Puppets Are Your Only Friends, I think. Produced it.
Yeah.
Is that available anywhere for people to see if they wanted to check it out? Do you know?
I don't remember. I think what happened to that video? I'm not quite sure. Was it filmed, or was it that the camera was projecting the stuff on the background? That might have been the reason.
Oh, if they didn't hit record too, that's a travesty. Oh my God, you always hit record if you're going to do that too. No, but no, was there even a projection? I don't even remember. I think they did like a slideshow. I don't remember it being projected. I don't think.
I think they might have had two. I did a couple of performances, so it might be one or the other. But I think they had two screens either side on that one. I might be wrong. About
it was such
and I think they failed. Did they not? Did the screens turn off halfway through? And they had that little DVD projecting thing going on around, which they tried their best. They're real nice chaps over there, and it was a very short notice thing. And they were. The guy that ran it, actually, I was like, "Is there any way we can project it? Is there any way? Because these things are so small. I know it's a tiny room. Is there any way?" And he goes, I'll find these screens for you. I'll get you some screens. And I think he just went to Best Buy, and they have a really good return policy. I think I was like, no one trip over these screens, otherwise this guy is.
Yes.
Been there.
Yeah. I used to call it the Best Buy rental, quote unquote.
Yeah. That guy's name is Jared. He and his
Jared.
Wife Molly. They run that thing. I guess they're not at the moment, but I think it was maybe a monthly thing that they did at the Lyric Hyperion.
Yeah, I know Jared's been hosting a lot of stuff. He does some Instagram lives and stuff. We'll leave a link to that down below too. And they do they promote a lot of great puppetry. So
they're really passionate about it too. It's lovely to see.
Yeah.
I'm curious, and you've already talked about how your animation background has come into play in a lot of different ways, from the construction and but does storyboarding ever come into any of the process of when you're creating any of the film pieces or anything like that?
Storyboarding, I used to think that was kind of an integral part of stop motion, and like inevitably what I would do was start out and get all of the shading done and everything, and by the fifth frame they were all stick figures and all this kind of thing. And I've realized I've spoken to some animation directors about it, and if you're working on a project on your own, I guess it completely depends on the person, and some people might kind of find it quite therapeutic and calming to like really plan everything, but I'm not really one of those people. I think storyboards are very useful if you're working with a team of people, so that you can tell them exactly what's in your head. There may be some circumstances where it's not necessary, but I think that stands to reason. But for my work, when it comes to planning, I usually have the script in like a Google document or something like that, and then in a different color I'll write close-up shot or something like that, something that simple, and I never stick to it. I just have it there in case for some reason my mind goes blank trying to do it. But I always go completely off script with it, because there's no greater way of envisioning what it could be than to have the camera there and try a few different shots, And I learned that from stop motion, really, because stop motion shots, each one would take hours to execute, sometimes days. So to spend 20 minutes to an hour figuring out what shot to use and what one works is not really a big percentage of the time that it takes. So it was always worth doing. So as a result, I think it's a great way to kind of learn cinematography, because you have all the time in the world. You're not worried about kind of actors getting bored or tired or this kind of thing. You can take the time to make the decisions that are the right ones and figure out what they are by trial and error. And then eventually the error kind of falls away a little bit, although there's inevitably going to be some left. and you're able to sort of think, this type of shot would work here. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, well, and you've got the benefit of, since it is, mostly a one-man band, even if you're in the editing room and you think like, oh, I need a pickup shot or I need a close-up of some toe tapping or something, you could always just go back and film it again.
That's really nice too. Yeah, because they're always on hand.
Right.
Literally,
I am curious though, for the not to go too far back, but for the Dark Crystal project, what was that collaboration like in terms of the choreography and knowing how they were going to be captured? Because I'm sure the director, who's also the DP, kind of had his own vision of how this would look.
Yeah. There was a few people kind of in creative control of that scene. I wasn't one of them, and I was quite happy not to be. I was focusing on what I was doing, and that was okay. We had the director, because this was they have, I think it's called Shadow Unit, so they have like one main shoot in the Shadow Unit. So we were in Shadow Unit, which is usually a little bit more laid back, and that suited me really nicely. Toby Froud kind of understood that scene. He'd been thinking about it the longest, and I think to a degree, maybe he wrote it or something. I'm not completely sure. At least he was very integral in it coming together. So we just deferred to him on a lot of the stuff. They did have a director come in called Stefan, I think. I can't remember. But he was there when everything was set up. And maybe he was a cinematographer. I lose track of things. Anyway, in terms of the movement and choreography, I could suggest things in terms like, it would be, the puppet should jump on this bit, and they would generally take my word for it, because I know what would look good in terms of, which way he should come into the frame and all that kind of thing, and what type of steps to take as well, because the ground was very bumpy, so too shallow a step and it would kind of catch on something, and so that things like that informed, I guess, the choreography too. And I think to a degree there were some ideas that would come up with on the spot. It kind of the way I do it. Maybe that's more normal for a shadow unit than a main shoot. Maybe it's more planned out there. Louis Leterrier, I think the director, had a very good idea of what he was doing, and I don't know to what degree he winged it.
Yeah.
I don't think very much.
He was
very easygoing, having said that.
Yeah, we talked to Becky Henderson, who was one of the principal puppeteers.
Oh, she's really sweet.
Oh yeah, she's great. And she mentioned that she was given a storyboard for just about the whole project. Really? So I didn't know if that was something that made it your way or not, like if you were kind of working to that.
I don't think I saw a storyboard. I could have done. I don't remember. Maybe that's something they also sort of send to Netflix for certain approvals and stuff, and don't stick to. I don't know. Maybe I'm not sure. I'm just speculating.
No, that's cool though. And you always like to hear that there's that level of collaboration that's available, because sometimes you get sticklers with their storyboards, and I've certainly been guilty of this myself, where you're trying so hard for it to look like what it did on the page, and then you got to realize, like, no, we're in the real world now, and this is how it has to be. This is what's going to work in the real time.
This is what screwed me up a little bit with stop motion sometimes. I might have said this last time on the podcast, but it's when you would have something like, if you're stop motion animating a certain scene and you have an idea in the moment and you're thinking like, it'd be funny if the character like scratches his butt here, that would be great, that would really, but then you think, is that just, am I sort of delirious because I've been animating for 12 hours straight? Is that a funny idea? Am I willing to sacrifice another 12 hours getting this stupid action done that I'm going to look back on and think that's stupid? So you refer to prior planning a little bit, especially when it comes to movements and things like that take a while to do in stop motion. But with puppetry, try a butt scratch, try a sniff, try a whatever, exactly. Then just have them all on your, in the reels and edit them later and see which works in the editing room.
Totally.
Give yourself that freedom.
Are you a fan by chance of the show Parks and Recreation?
I saw some outtakes of that.
Oh, okay. There's a wonderful scene where one of the main characters gets laid off from his job, so he decides to take up stop motion animation.
Oh, really? That's
and because it was this passion project that he had since college, and so he spends a week doing this really avant-garde thing, and he goes to show his wife of like what he's been working on for a whole week, and it ends up being like 3 seconds long, and he has a mental breakdown of like, that took me a week.
Yeah.
And I always refer back to that when I do a lot of storyboarding, just personally, but as well for a lot of our puppetry things. And it can feel that way sometimes, of just like, you know, oh, you're just trudging through it.
Oh, it can be painstaking. Yeah, there would be 3 seconds a week would be slow, but then if you do have a character or a scene with loads of characters in and a moving camera, that kind of thing, easily that could be the case.
Yeah,
sure.
big time.
The Leica guys, you know, their attention to detail is such that I would believe that they get themselves in those situations quite often.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Wow,
but with great effects.
So, you know, it's also just with the Dark Crystal. What would you say was like your favorite part of being a part of this project?
There was so much. It's hard to pinpoint one individual part of it. I think.
Well, one thing I should just point out myself is just the fact that you were able to also build with it as well. It's not like you just came in to perform something. I think that's, you know, it's very special that you were able to work on both aspects of that. Yeah,
I find it funny sometimes that, I mean, I guess they make it work because they get good results. But for me I wouldn't know, for this theatre project, for example, I wouldn't have known where to start if I wasn't a puppeteer as well as a puppet maker. You know, I don't think I would have had that intuition to know or the ability to troubleshoot quite so fast. Especially since we've been on lockdown and we're kind of all working on our separate pieces. I can't just go up to someone and say, try this, does this work? Give me your feedback. You know, I think it expedites the process so much. So I think that it was nice that they, you know, gave that trust in me, knowing that, you know, he knows what he's doing with this particular part. So, I mean, we talk about the design, and like I say, the 3-finger thing was a slight change, which worked really well, which we came up with. But at no point did I feel like, oh, they're running away with this creatively, and I don't feel in control. I mean, at the same time, I wasn't in control of the elements, and that was a good thing. You know, it's deferring responsibility to people, or rather them deferring that responsibility to me, and that made it very easy and a pleasurable experience all around.
That's great. That's awesome.
That's very cool.
Another thing online that I really enjoyed was watching your segment that you did on Tested with Adam Savage. And I thought he asked some really awesome questions, and you guys were, you know, you could totally see how excited he was to see your creations up close. He was blown away by it. But beyond what we see in the video, I was curious as just what it was like being there. Did you get to see some extra kind of cool things that you might be able to talk about?
In the Tested studio, it was pretty quick. I just visited Alcatraz. Actually, I was doing and it was the same day, so we got up super, because you know it's quite hard to get kind of tickets for the boat there if you arrive that same day. So we had to get up really early the next morning. So we had done a whole day of shooting, and I got there, and I think maybe I'd have been more receptive to what was going on if I was less tired, maybe. But it's a great space. Adam's like studio is so kind of messy, organized. It's hard to explain. It's admirable though. It's like he knows where everything is, and everything seems to have its place. But there's a kind of cluttered aesthetic that's really charming about it. Yeah, and
I understand somewhat.
Yeah.
At least half of that.
Oh man, I've spaces that are like this. In fact, yours looks pretty tidy comparatively. Yeah.
No, that's so cool. And my other question is, when he did the puppetry in the beginning, how many takes did he do?
Oh, one. He's so quick. I think that whole video. There's obviously.
I'm sorry. Adam will explain why I'm laughing just as much as I am. But sorry, please. I didn't mean to interrupt
it's okay. That's all right. Yeah, you made that puppet. I remember, and he remembered your name, and I was like, oh yeah, I know that fella.
I got to see him, because you mentioned Vsauce earlier too. It's Michael Stevens. They did a show together called Brain Candy, and they were on tour. Yes, and I built those puppets, and I built them really quick. It was really kind of a one-day build, and I usually spend a lot more time on it. And I was literally stitching some parts together while my wife was driving the car to get there.
Wow.
And my biggest heartbreak I personally have in there that I always like to take really nice pictures of my puppets, right? And I wasn't able to get those really nice pictures. I was gonna put them together and even make a fake poster of the Brain Candy poster of the two. And luckily, at least Adam has used the puppet a little bit and taken some pictures of it. But I was really happy with the Michael Stevens one too, and that one I don't think has ever seen public. I'm sure just he's using it in his house or something, or on display or something, or maybe not. Who knows?
It's hard to know. I mean, I guess it's like what we were saying before. Some things are going to hit, and some things, it just doesn't. It doesn't get the exposure that would be ideal. But I think it is a good move overall. I mean, what you've been doing and getting those puppets to folks. I've seen you did a Phil DeFranco one too. Maybe?
Oh, geez, yeah, that.
Yeah.
That's another one I wish I spent a little more time on. But I did one with Jazza, Draw with Jazza, which was a lot of fun too. Especially collaborating with him, because the other ones were kind of just things that I did and put out there, whereas the one with Jazza was a real collaboration with him, which is obviously the preferred way to work in probably any artistic projects that you do that are inspired by something else.
I know one YouTuber that's quite well known that I feel fairly certain if you were to send it his way that he'd use it, but I will I'll ask him about it beforehand so you don't do it for no reason.
Okay, sure. Yeah, we'll talk after the show.
Yeah, for sure. And I wouldn't want to put him on the spot just in case he's a busy dude, but I think he'd be receptive to it. Yeah,
that's cool.
No, it's so great. So obviously, there's things that you're continuing to work on, and you have this theater show coming up. But what are some of the new creative problems that you're trying to solve as you kind of move into the future? Are there things that you want to try or experiment with that we could, kind of look forward to seeing in the next few years?
I think I'm at the moment working on a fair few things, and I like the musical aspect of it. When I had that video with the Omnichord, it was like, oh, this is such a great device because it's like one chord per button. So when fingers become limited because of puppets, and you want to do things live, it's just very useful to have something like that. So that was great. But I'm working on another instrument that combines a few different things that feasibly dabbed you could play. But that involves kind of like some electronics that are just a little bit beyond my capabilities. So just sort of whittling away at that. That's one of the plates that I'm trying to kind of keep spinning. And sometimes the plates fall off and smash. but we'll see. I guess there's a lot of ideas. Well, I come up with ideas all the time, and some of them are just absolutely useless and stupid. And I don't know. But at the time, I think they're incredible. But usually, it doesn't take me too long to realize. It doesn't. I've not invested weeks and weeks. I'm sure I have actually. No, I'll take that back. I'm sure I've invested weeks and weeks on projects that are absolutely stupid, but you get enough of them out there and you kind of whittle away the bad ones and stick with the good ones, and hopefully the net is a positive result. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. I think that's great. And, as we've been talking this whole time about just continuing to do the work and put the time in, and just keep outputting stuff is really great. Yeah, it's
crucial. I think some people are reticent about starting too, and they're nervous, but I really, if you don't start, then 6 months from that point you'll be like, I could be 6 months better now. Right. If I'd have started when I'd said I was, so the sooner you can start messing up, the sooner that you can kind of steer it into something that people really enjoy. It's going to be, things are going to be bad to start with for sure. I mean, there's no one that can knock out of the park the first time really. And if you do, that's, like you say, that's kind of a curse really, because you're like, oh, how did this happen? You've got no track record of figuring out the path to success. So, they say that about like one hit wonder bands, and
absolutely.
I think a similar thing kind of holds true.
Yeah. One thing we talked about briefly last time is I talked about, like what your idea is for the future and would you want to expand. And one thing you talked about is how you like that, by doing it by yourself, you don't have to rely on other people being 100% invested because you're 100% invested in it.
Yeah.
And the more people, the more people,
that.
the more people you introduce, the more, in a way they, it's sometimes hard to get buy-in with people on your projects, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I just one thing I just was curious is like, let's say in a perfect world, like someone was to give you a budget of $10 million and you were able to write a feature and have a team, like what types of things would you try to create with essentially, comparative to what we have now, unlimited resources like that?
That's an interesting question, and I am in the position at the moment, and I have been in the past too, of trying to come up with that answer, and it's not to that level of budget, but things like that, and it's tricky because in a way it's sort of out of my environment, in that my whole ethos has been, how can I do this for cheap, and that's informed the aesthetic and all that kind of thing. So preserving that aesthetic without it seeming preserved in a forced way would I guess be quite crucial. And also retaining any other aspect that was successful about working on your own, but finding a way to scale it up without sacrificing the integrity of it, I think is key. As to the details of it, I guess, I don't know. I think I would just tackle them when they came along. I think I'm less cynical about collaboration now, having had some really good experiences doing it. I think if we chatted in August of 2018, that would have been pretty much exactly when I was shooting Dark Crystal too. So I was getting some very good experiences collaborating then. I don't think I was altogether too cynical, but at the same time, there is definitely a benefit in being able to rely on yourself. And whatever, here's a good thing about that. I think when you make a mistake or when the project fails somehow, you cannot scapegoat anyone other than yourself. So the only growth that's going to be, the only growth that's going to be done is on your part. So you get all of the, you can't, I mean, not that I would, but, or maybe if I would, who knows, you can't blame anyone else. You can only blame yourself, and you stand to gain a lot if you kind of take heed of that and are able to, not loathe yourself, but better yourself, of course. Yeah.
No, that's true. That's definitely true. And hopefully, I can see a future where potential opportunities like that would arise to you, and I can imagine a future of you as like even a director for things. If you were to work on other people's project, and I hope people would, because it's hard, because especially in a genre like puppetry, we get compartmentalized in many other people's projects for things, and it's nice when people are able to look at something.
Same with stop motion, I think. Yeah.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah, definitely so.
Yeah, it's nice when people are able to look at something and think of different ways, or say, oh, that mentality would work good for this as well. And I hope people see your work in that way, and it opens up some of those other opportunities where you can be creative in ways that maybe you didn't even expect to be.
Yeah, I hope so, for sure. I think it's making the most of opportunities like that, because they're not, they don't happen every day. But at the same time, kind of retaining what you feel is integral to the success of it is crucial too. So, you never want to get into a situation where they might own too much of the pub, or be able to take it in a direction that you're just simply not sure about. I mean, but at the same time, you shouldn't be pig-headed to the point that it's like, no, I'm not open to this, no, I'm not open to that. It's collaboration's important. Taking on other people's ideas are important too. You can't just look at them, oh, they're not good because they're other people's ideas. There's a bit of that in me, and it's not, it's very limited there, and it's getting less and less with each collaboration that I do.
Yeah, you know what? This is I realize a little late in the interview to get talking about this, but I am interested in the shift from working alone to working in collaboration with people has me thinking about what has it been like for you, and maybe through the directing that you're doing now, or with the Dark Crystal or something like that, to see your style of puppetry being with characters interacting with each other, because so often your characters, as they're known, can only be by themselves, by the nature of how you bring them to life. Have you learned anything about your puppetry by seeing that style interact with one another?
there's definitely narrative benefits to having more than one character. So to find a way to do that, and even kind of there's something satisfying to see them kind of like bump off each other and things like that. So chroma key can get you part of the way. I don't generally use chroma key though. I usually use blacklight. And for this 1 million subscriber special thing I did with the glowing little wall puppets, that was 2 puppets that were both 2-handed operations. So I just shot one, then shot the other one, and just color shifted them and changed the masks around. But it's the same puppet. But you're limited in terms of the physical interactions they can do with each other, because they would just glide through themselves like video games, bad graphics, So, but still, you get a lot of the interaction in terms of like the mood and the conversational stuff. It would be very fun it'd be fun to be able to. And I guess in the Dark Crystal, I did kind of get to do that a little bit. There was some kind of creature that the puppet kind of got close to, and it sort of the fan popped up and knocked him backwards. Little things like that were fun. Yeah. But in terms of how I could do that on my own, I did do it once on my own actually with those little post-it note puppets, because they were one-handed operations and they were shoving them each other around.
Oh, that's
quite
right.
a lot. Yeah.
Well, if you're ever looking for performance partners, Adam and I are game to hop across the pond and.
Oh, really? Well, thank you.
That's right. Yeah, and actually, I just because you just mentioned that, I meant to bring it up earlier, but people should definitely check out that post-it note video that you did, because I think that's a really great way of making it accessible to people who, at bare minimum, just want to play a little bit. Yeah,
a starting point. I think that's a nice little thing. That was done in collaboration with Great Big Story.
Oh, was it?
Mm-hmm.
But they have since gone bankrupt. And I wonder if Dabchick messed it. Or I don't know if they've gone bankrupt, or rather the company's sort of just. I'm not quite sure on the details. But that was kind of a pity, because they gave me some exposure early on in a really, really lovely piece that they shot early 2017. I think.
Yeah.
Really lovely chaps.
We talked about that piece a little bit last time too. It was beautiful, absolutely beautifully done.
Yeah. They're really talented. I'm sure they will find other work though. They're very good. Yeah.
Awesome.
That's a sad note to leave on. We should do one more question or something like that. Or we can do as many.
No. Well, before we kind of get to our wrap up, is there anything that you were sort of hoping to be able to talk about in this conversation that through our questions we didn't kind of give you the opportunity to share?
Well, I guess just keep on the lookout for new stuff from my channel. If you haven't subscribed to it, it'd be great if you could. I'm sure you guys are. But I'm taking it in. I try lots of new directions all the time, and there's one that's becoming more and more viable at the moment, and quite a nice time to do it too. So it is Phil, the fish puppet, is likely going to be doing kind of like a podcast style thing with guests that he interviews from his fishbowl.
Very cool.
I think it's, and I already have just today actually, so it's kind of fresh in my mind. So now I feel more obligation to actually do it now that I've said it to you guys. So that's good. Two excellent guests have confirmed. So that's really, really great. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, so we will definitely be on the lookout for that.
Other than that, people can follow me on Instagram and Twitter too. I'm Barnaby Dixon or Barnaby J Dixon I can't remember which way around it is. One way round. And where else am I? I have a Facebook page too, which is Barnaby Dixon something. If you type in Barnaby Dixon puppets, I'm sure it will come up.
We'll put all the socials up right here on the screen.
And definitely consider supporting him as well on his Patreon. That's a great place to definitely check him out.
Thanks very much.
Well, yeah, and you know what? Real quick before we have you go, what we like to ask all of our guests who come on the show as we wrap up, if you have a good puppeteers story, a tale of a time where something didn't go right in the moment, kind of a blooper or a war story, and it could be on the set or in a rehearsal room or just in the workshop. Where something didn't go right, but we could kind of laugh about it now.
Yeah, let's think.
Did you step on Lisa Henson's toe?
Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, did you step on Lisa Henson's toe or something at rehearsal?
I don't think so. Not that I remember. Hope not. Now I'm thinking I did or something. No, I did a performance one time in Abbey Road Studios in London, and that would have been end of 2018, I think. And I forgot the one of the puppets' legs, and I was in the back of the Abbey Road Studios, and it looked like I was like preparing drugs or something, because I had the that little polymorph stuff, and I had like a spoon, very quickly making like that. I was like, and I made the joke on stage that got me in trouble, because I said something like, because I told the story, I said, I'm sure this isn't the first time Abbey Road Studio has seen this type of activity. And I said, and the sponsors.
So, because you were trying to make a leg in your dressing room or whatever.
Yes, I was trying to make a leg so that I could break a leg. Yeah. Well, it was kind of like it was like a peg leg I made. I kind of like split the difference, like there's not time to make a whole leg. But I did manage to make it. And at the end of the performance, because I'd already told the story, I kind of half on purpose had the leg fall off after it jumped into the air. It's like that. So it all came out fine, thankfully. But for a moment, I was a bit worried.
You just don't open any mail from Paul McCartney.
Yeah, I'd have been all right with it.
Yeah, that is so funny. Oh my gosh.
That's
well, at least
amazing.
you're able. It's funny how you're able to sometimes, when given no other options, you're like, oh, here we go, right? Make the best of it.
Yeah, there's something to that. It's quite freeing. It's like, well, I could have checked the bag before I went to this thing and have realized, but I didn't. So this is the situation we're in now. So he's going to have a peg leg. And it made a good story for the stage, if it did get me in trouble with it.
That's so funny. Okay,
I love it.
Wow. Well, everyone, we already went through his social media places to follow him, so make sure you check those all out. And Barnaby Dixon, thank you again so much for coming on the show. It was great to talk to you. And again, maybe in another 2 years or so, we'll talk to you again. So
yeah, that was a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks again.
Thanks, bud. Bye.
Oh, bye.
We're at the end of another episode of Puppeteers, but the fun doesn't stop here.
Visit puppeteers.com for show notes and links to projects mentioned in this episode.
Make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at PuppeteersPod, where we're posting new things every day.
Puppeteers is edited by Matt Bowen and made possible thanks to viewers like you.
If you enjoy this content, you can join our incredible Patreon patrons who are supporting the show for as little as $1 per episode. Those folks get access to early releases, uncut episodes, official Cup O tiers just like we use on the show, and could even submit interview questions for our guests. Go to patreon.com/puppeteerspod to learn more.
Another great way to support Puppeteers is rating and reviewing us on iTunes, leaving a comment or subscribing to this channel, or tell a friend about your favorite episode.
Thanks again for joining us on Puppeteers Puppetry Shop Talk, in-depth interviews with the world's most passionate puppeteers.
Hosted by me, Adam Kreutinger.
And me, Cameron Garrity.
And I'm sure a lot of people were also drawn to you from the building aspect of not just your puppets, but a lot of the things that you make and work on within a lot of your videos. And oh my gosh, I completely forgot where I was going with that question.
That's all right. You were saying about people being drawn to the making side of things, then through Dab Chick, the performance side of it. You started off the question saying people see you as a performer to a degree.
Oh my gosh, I completely
That's all right.
Completely
That
lost
can happen.
where I was saying that. I had such a good setup too, and I completely lost where I was going by the time I finished the
I
setup.
did the same thing. It's easy.
Oh, darn
It's
it.
easy to do.
It's not just the hair that's going gray anymore.
I know, right? Hey, I'm 32. It's not. Yeah. Oh, jeez.
Sorry,
But,
silver.
Yeah, silver. Exactly.